The starship descended through a haze of violet clouds, its armored hull groaning against the pull of Charon 7's dense atmosphere. Captain Marcus Hale stood near the viewport with his arms folded, watching the alien world rise to meet them. His expression was hard to read, though his eyes carried the steady glint of a man who had long ago stopped being impressed by danger. The soldiers flanking him shifted restlessly, but Hale remained unshaken, as though the moment carried no more weight than another dawn patrol. Behind him, Sergeant Leon Varga stretched his broad shoulders and muttered under his breath. "Feels like walking into someone else's gym." His deep voice carried a casual irreverence that matched his massive frame. The others chuckled, though Lieutenant Adrian Cole only allowed himself a faint smile. Cole was lean, sharp-eyed, and perpetually alert, always dissecting the environment with a quiet precision. Where Varga thrived on brute endurance and Hale relied on commanding presence, Cole operated with the cool logic of a strategist who never wasted a glance. The ship's landing struts groaned as they touched down. A hiss of hydraulics filled the silence before the bay doors opened, unveiling a platform bathed in harsh white light. Rows of alien officers stood in formation, their scaled armor reflecting with ceremonial sharpness. At their center, a towering figure in crimson robes observed the arrivals with disdain. Hale caught the flicker of amusement in the alien's slitted eyes, the same look he had seen countless times from men who thought they had already won before the first move. They were ushered onto the platform where gravity pressed down heavier than on Earth. Hale could feel it immediately in his muscles, a deliberate design to remind them that they were guests in a place meant to break them. The Dominion wanted to show humanity its insignificance. Hale almost pitied them for their optimism. The alien overseer raised a clawed hand. "Humans of Earth," his voice reverberated, translated through the air with a mechanical undertone, "you stand at the threshold of the gauntlet of Dominion. It is not a test. It is the crucible by which civilizations are measured. Few survive. None emerge unchanged. We do not expect you to last the first hour." Varga leaned closer to Hale, voice low but not low enough to be missed. "That's funny. They've clearly never seen basic training in July." Cole didn't laugh. His eyes tracked every mechanism along the platform, the shifting guards, the exits, the way the lighting left blind spots. "They're not posturing for entertainment," he said calmly. "They genuinely believe we'll collapse. That's their first mistake." The group was escorted into the central chamber. The air inside was stifling, thick with a weight that pressed against lungs and bones. It wasn't hostile in appearance, no spikes or flames, just the clean, sterile geometry of a proving ground. But Hale knew better. The Dominion didn't need theatrics, their design was cruelty in its most efficient form. A long corridor stretched before them, lined with shifting walls and pressure gates. Beyond, Hale glimpsed towering columns that moved like pistons, creating crushing hazards in unpredictable rhythms. Lightning arced across distant platforms. The sound of machinery grinding overhead echoed like the growl of a predator waiting for its meal. The alien overseer's voice carried from the observation deck above. "Proceed when ready. Endure if you can." Hale turned to his men, his tone low but certain. "Remember, this is just another exercise. Don't give them the satisfaction of seeing strain." Varga grinned, rolling his neck. "Strain? Captain, I haven't even broken a sweat." Cole's reply was quiet, deliberate. "Save the breath. The real game is reading what they don't want us to notice." They entered the corridor. The first shift of gravity struck instantly, pulling down on them with twice the force of Earth. Hale's boots felt like they had been filled with lead, but his stride didn't falter. Varga powered forward, teeth clenched, every movement driven by raw muscle. Cole adjusted his steps with uncanny efficiency, calculating the minimum exertion required to keep pace. A wall slammed down suddenly, missing Hale by inches. He ducked beneath it without hesitation, gesturing sharply for Varga to follow. Cole didn't flinch, already moving into a gap that appeared just as the second barrier descended. To the spectators above, it might have looked like luck. To Hale, it was just another day of instinct meeting preparation. The corridor narrowed into a chamber where columns descended like titanic hammers. The floor shook with each impact. Varga laughed over the roar, weaving between strikes with surprising agility for his size. "I've sparred with heavier fists," he shouted, the words more for the watching aliens than his companions. Hale caught the flicker of irritation from the observation deck, a small crack in their mask of superiority. Cole pressed a hand against a wall panel, feeling the vibrations. His eyes sharpened. "Patterns not random," he murmured. He mapped the rhythm in seconds, then signaled the path forward. Hale trusted the call instantly, leading them through a gap that seemed impossibly narrow but opened precisely as predicted. They cleared the chamber without a misstep. By the time they reached the first checkpoint, alien cadets from other species were already collapsing behind them, bodies shaking under the relentless gravity. Hale's men paused only long enough for a breath, then continued as though pacing themselves for a marathon rather than survival. Hours passed. The trials grew harsher, blinding lights, thunderous sound meant to disorient, sudden temperature shifts that clawed at flesh. Yet the humans pressed on, steady, deliberate, and even mocking. Varga hummed a marching cadence through the noise, throwing defiance into the face of sensory warfare. Cole's precision never wavered, his calculations ensuring they conserved energy where others wasted it. Hale's leadership held them together, his confidence a shield against despair. From the observation deck, the alien overseer's posture grew tense. What was designed to humiliate had become spectacle. Instead of breaking, the humans adapted. Instead of faltering, they seemed to be settling into rhythm. The Dominion had unleashed their finest cruelty, yet their subjects treated it as though it were the opening stretch of a workout. The final obstacle in the first phase loomed before them, a suspended bridge under shifting gravity, high winds whipping across a chasm that descended into darkness. The cables groaned, swaying violently. Aliens had designed this crossing to terrify, to unhinge resolve before the next trial. Hale stepped onto the bridge first, boots planting firm despite the shifting pull. He didn't glance at the void below. Behind him, Varga moved like a boulder given legs, each step solid enough to anchor the swaying planks. Cole brought up the rear, eyes constantly scanning, timing his pace with precision. Halfway across, the winds screamed, tearing at their balance. Hale shouted over the gale. "Eyes forward. Nothing down there matters." His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. They pressed on, shoulders squared, unflinching. When they reached the other side, the silence that followed was heavier than the wind had been. The chamber doors closed behind them, sealing the trial's first stage. For the first time, Hale allowed himself a faint smile. His men stood beside him, steady and ready, not broken. The chamber's doors slid open with a hiss, revealing a vast arena lined with alien spectators. The air thrummed with a low vibration, a subtle reminder that they were being judged from every angle. Captain Hale adjusted the strap on his rifle. Though no ammunition had been provided, the weapon was symbolic, a tool meant for the Dominion stage. He could feel their contempt pressing down heavier than the gravity. Every step forward was another chance for the Dominion to watch them fail. Sergeant Varga cracked his knuckles as if the ordeal were little more than a sparring match. "Looks like they brought an audience this time," he said, his grin wide. His voice carried with deliberate volume, echoing against the steel walls. He wanted them to hear his lack of fear. Hale allowed it. Let the arrogance cut both ways. Lieutenant Cole, silent as always, walked with his gaze fixed not on the crowd but on the structures ahead. Towers jutted from the ground at uneven intervals, each bristling with mechanisms. Streams of crackling energy danced between them like artificial lightning. The Dominion had adjusted the gauntlet, ensuring this second stage was not merely a continuation but an escalation. From the viewing platform above, the crimson-robed overseer raised a clawed hand. His amplified voice filled the arena. The first trial was designed to weed out weakness. You advanced by chance, by the quirks of biology. Now you face the crucible of will. Every step will test your limits. Every breath will defy your nature. Do not expect mercy. Hale didn't bother to answer. He motioned for his men forward, and together they stepped into the storm. The moment they crossed the threshold, the arena came alive. Gravity shifted in chaotic waves, pulling one moment toward the ground, the next sideways as though the world itself tilted. Hale locked his stance, moving steadily despite the force dragging at his body. Varga's raw strength carried him through, each muscle straining but refusing to give. Cole bent his knees at precise angles, adjusting with the calm of a man who saw patterns others missed. The lightning struck next. Forks of plasma lashed across the platforms, scorching metal where they landed. Hale darted forward, scanning for cover but finding none. It wasn't designed for evasion, it was designed to overwhelm. He barked a sharp order, voice rising over the thunder. Stay close. Match pace. They formed a tight triangle, each man relying on the other's positioning to minimize exposure. Varga laughed as a bolt singed the air beside him. If this is their best, I want my money back. The bravado was partly true, partly show. Hale knew the man's lungs burned and his muscles trembled under the layered punishment, but Varga refused to give the crowd what they wanted. Cole, by contrast, never wasted energy on bravado. He pointed suddenly toward a tower's base. Field projectors. They're guiding the strikes. Watch the intervals. His voice was calm, measured, and entirely certain. They began moving according to Cole's rhythm. Every step timed with the flicker of energy, every advance aligned with the narrow gaps between strikes. From above, the spectacle no longer looked like desperate humans dodging chance but like soldiers dismantling chaos with order. The alien spectators shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Hale caught glimpses of other species in the gauntlet. A scaled warrior collapsed under the crushing gravity, writhing until medics dragged him clear. A towering insectoid froze mid-stride when plasma split its carapace, leaving smoke rising from its husk. One by one, competitors faltered. The humans alone advanced without pause. The Dominion responded by heightening the storm. The towers surged brighter, the ground tilted more violently, and the temperature spiked until sweat poured from their skin. Hale felt his vision blur, his chest clenching under the strain, but he forced his stride to remain steady. If his men saw weakness in him, they would falter too. Varga staggered under a downward pull that felt like drowning in air. He gritted his teeth, veins bulging along his arms as he forced himself upright. Not today, he growled, each word torn from effort. Hale reached back, steadying him with a brief grip. It was all that was needed. Varga's fire reignited, and he surged forward again, laughter spilling from his throat like defiance given form. Cole remained precise, his face pale but focused. He spoke through clenched teeth. We're reaching equilibrium. Push forward another 50 meters. The storm cycles repeat. They didn't think we'd last long enough to notice. Hale's lips curved faintly. Then let's prove them wrong again. They pushed forward, breaking through the surge until they reached the heart of the arena. Here the Dominion had prepared their masterpiece. A wall of shifting panels rose high as a fortress, each surface slick with magnetic energy. The only way forward was upward, a climb that no alien had completed under the storm's pressure. The overseer's voice echoed again. Climb. If you can. His tone dripped with mockery. Hale looked at his men, then at the wall. Without hesitation, he leapt first, fingers locking onto the humming surface. Sparks bit into his palms, but he gritted against the sting. Varga followed, his weight making the wall shudder with each pull. Cole came last, methodical, always searching for the most efficient holds. The storm roared louder, winds tearing across the structure. Hale's muscles burned, every fiber screaming protest, but he refused to stop. This was where leadership meant more than rank. If he faltered, if he gave them one moment of hesitation, everything would unravel. He climbed higher, calling down over his shoulder. Eyes up. Keep moving. They want us broken, let's give them something else to watch. Varga bellowed in agreement, his laughter booming even as sparks scorched his arms. Cole climbed in silence, conserving every ounce of energy, though his jaw was set hard. At the halfway mark, the wall shifted, panels rotating to eject them. Hale slammed a boot against the surface and steadied himself, then reached back with one arm to catch Varga before he slipped. The sergeant snarled, furious at the wall itself, and launched upward with renewed force. Cole adapted instantly, reading the rotations and charting new paths. The climb became a battle of will against machinery, yet together they scaled the wall. When Hale's hand finally grasped the top edge, the roar of the storm seemed to fade into silence. He hauled himself over, then pulled Varga and Cole up after him. They stood on the summit, battered and burned, but unbroken. Below them, the arena lay littered with fallen cadets. Above them, the overseer's smugness had fractured into disbelief. The silence from the crowd was louder than any cheer could have been. Varga raised his arms, breathing hard but grinning through blooded lips. "That all you've got?" Cole wiped a smear of soot from his cheek, his voice low and calm. "They'll escalate again. They can't afford not to." Hale straightened, his gaze locked on the overseer. Sweat dripped down his face, but his eyes were steady, his voice carrying across the chamber without need for amplification. "You wanted to see our limits. You're still looking." The overseer's claws curled against the railing. The next trial was already being prepared, more vicious than the last. But as the humans stood side by side on the summit, the outcome no longer felt as certain as it once had. The chamber lights dimmed until only the glow of scarlet glyphs lined the walls. A mechanical grind echoed overhead, and the floor beneath the soldiers trembled. Captain Hale stood firm at the center of the platform, his jaw set, eyes fixed on the shifting doors ahead. He had expected escalation, but the silence before the next trial felt deliberate, as if the Dominion wanted their anticipation to work against them. Hale didn't give them the satisfaction of a flinch. Sergeant Varga stretched his arms wide and rolled his shoulders as though preparing for another workout, though sweat already glistened along his brow. "They're dragging it out," he muttered, voice low but charged with restless energy. "Trying to get in our heads." His grin returned, though thinner than before. "Never worked on me." Lieutenant Cole crouched at the platform's edge, fingers brushing the grooves of the metal. His eyes followed the tremors as though they were lines in a code. "They're assembling something larger. This isn't another obstacle course. This is a battlefield." His voice carried no fear, only analysis, yet the weight of his words pressed against Hale's mind. The platform lurched, rising into a colossal arena under an artificial sky that shimmered with pale blue light. Towers stretched into the haze, their tips bristling with weapon arrays. From hidden ports in the walls, drones emerged in tight formations, their sleek frames armed with plasma rifles that glowed menacingly. The Dominion had stopped disguising cruelty as trial. This was open war. The overseer's voice thundered across the arena. "No human has endured this phase. You may withdraw and save what little dignity your kind has left. Or you may continue and perish." Hale raised his voice, calm but edged with defiance. "We're not here to quit." He motioned to his men. "Formation. Adapt on the move. We treat it like the field." The drones descended with blinding speed, weapons spitting arcs of plasma. Hale dove behind a fragment of cover, the heat searing past his ear. Varga roared as he ripped a metal plate from the ground, using it as a shield while charging forward. Bolts slammed against it, sparks flying, but his advance didn't falter. Cole remained in the back, eyes darting with cold precision as he calculated trajectories. He barked short instructions that cut through the chaos. "Left flank weak. Tower at 30 meters controls that cluster." Hale didn't question. He sprinted toward the indicated tower, weaving between strikes, his movements sharp despite the oppressive gravity. He scaled the base in a surge of effort and ripped free a panel, exposing circuits. With a hard pull he disabled the control node, and half the drone swarm faltered, crashing into the ground. The crowd above erupted in shouts, half in outrage, half in awe. Varga pressed the advantage, slamming one drone into another with his makeshift shield until both shattered. "This is what they call impossible." His voice carried like a battle drum. His body bore burns and cuts, but his momentum only grew. Cole moved with quieter efficiency. He scavenged weapons from the fallen drones, recalibrating their firing sequence with frightening speed. In minutes he had reprogrammed 2 rifles, turning the Dominion's own machines against them. Plasma bolts hissed from his hands with unerring accuracy, striking drones from the air in disciplined bursts. The battle raged for hours under shifting conditions. Gravity surged until knees buckled, then vanished until every leap became uncontrolled. Temperatures swung from searing heat to bone-freezing cold. The Dominion tested not only their bodies but their endurance of chaos itself. Where other species would crumble, Hale and his men adapted with stubborn ferocity. Varga endured the heat by stripping off his scorched vest and fighting bare-chested, skin blistered but spirit unbroken. Cole endured the cold with deliberate control of his breathing, every movement efficient, conserving energy while others would waste it. Hale kept both men alive with constant orders, never allowing despair to creep in, his presence a tether that held the trio together. At one point, a drone struck Hale in the side, searing deep into flesh. He staggered, blood wetting his uniform, but forced himself upright. Varga grabbed his arm. "Captain." "Not now," Hale cut him off, voice firm even as pain throbbed. "We finish this." His refusal to yield lit fire in both men, harder than any order could have. They fought through wave after wave until the arena lay littered with wreckage. Only 3 figures remained standing, battered but unbroken. Smoke curled into the artificial sky, and silence fell heavy across the observation decks. The overseer leaned forward, claws tapping against the railing. His eyes glowed with fury. "Still you persist." Cole's voice was hoarse, his chest rising in ragged breaths, but his words carried weight. "You built this battlefield to show us our limits. But all you've shown is your failure to understand us." Varga slammed his makeshift shield onto the ground with a resounding clang, his laughter hoarse yet unyielding. "You call this the end? This was just the fight to keep us awake." Hale straightened despite the blood soaking his side, his gaze unflinching as it locked onto the overseer. He raised his voice so every alien in the arena could hear. "You wanted to crush us. You forgot we've spent our entire history fighting wars in worse hells than this. You thought this would be our breaking point. You were wrong." For the first time since their arrival, the overseer did not reply. His silence spoke volumes. The Dominion would escalate again, Hale knew. They couldn't allow this defiance to stand without challenge. Yet that was the point. The humans had already proven what the Dominion had refused to believe: they would not break, no matter the scale of cruelty. Hale turned to his men, nodding once. They were blooded, exhausted, but their eyes burned with the same fire as his. He felt pride rise in his chest, stronger than pain, stronger than fear. They were ready for whatever came next. The platform beneath their feet shuddered again, descending toward the next trial. The arena lights dimmed, plunging them into shadow. Above, murmurs spread among the alien audience like the first cracks in a wall long thought indestructible. The humans had endured what no others had. The Dominion's gauntlet was failing, and with it, their certainty of superiority. The descent ended with a shudder that rattled through bone and steel. The platform slowed, locking into place with a hiss of pressure seals, and for a moment the silence was so deep it seemed to swallow breath itself. Captain Hale scanned the chamber as the walls unfolded, revealing a vast expanse unlike anything they had faced before. It wasn't a maze or a battlefield this time, it was a void, a shifting environment designed to unmake body and mind alike. The floor beneath their boots flickered as though it were woven from unstable energy, and in the distance, constructs shaped like living shadows stirred in anticipation. Sergeant Varga spat to the side, his lips curled in contempt. "Figures. After all that steel and fire, they're sending ghosts at us." His bravado held, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed the exhaustion pressing against him. He had pushed through burns, crushed muscles, and storms engineered to break giants, yet his grin remained, carved out of defiance alone. Lieutenant Cole studied the shimmering landscape, his face pale beneath the grime. His eyes narrowed, every movement of the shadow constructs measured, analyzed, catalogued. They've moved beyond the physical. These are simulations meant to tear at the mind. Hallucination, disorientation, illusions woven with real pain. If they can't beat our bodies, they'll try to shatter what holds us together. The overseer's voice drifted down, colder than before. You endure when others perish. You resist where others crumble. Now we strip away your illusions of strength. When the mind breaks, the body follows. Hale steadied his breathing, his blood still crusted along his uniform from the last battle. His men were wounded, exhausted, but unbroken. He had seen men collapse under far less than this, yet here they stood. He would not allow despair to creep into them now. Then we hold to the only truth that matters, he said quietly, his tone calm and ironclad. That we don't break. Not here, not anywhere. The shadow constructs advanced, flowing across the unstable floor like liquid night. Their forms shifted with each step, sometimes towering beasts, sometimes faceless soldiers, sometimes reflections of the men themselves, twisted and broken. The illusions reached into memory, plucking fears and failures from the recesses of the mind. One rose before Varga in the shape of a massive figure with his own face, yet larger, stronger, laughing at him. You'll never be enough, the double jeered, each word digging claws into his resolve. Varga snarled, rage flashing in his eyes. He swung with raw fury, his fists striking not air but resistance that cracked beneath his blows. The laughter faltered, then dissolved. Varga roared after it, chest heaving, and for a moment the crowd above glimpsed what true defiance looked like, a man refusing even his own demons. Cole faced something quieter, more insidious. Shapes whispered around him, voices of failure, predictions of defeat. He heard the overseer's voice blending with his own, insisting logic demanded surrender. He closed his eyes, blocking the illusions from sight, and listened instead to the steady rhythm of his breath. His voice emerged calm and certain. Noise is still only noise. Patterns remain. And patterns can be broken. He moved with deliberate precision, tracing the rhythm of the illusions, unraveling their sequences until they collapsed like faulty equations. Hale faced a different trial. The shadows coalesced into figures from his past, men under his command who had fallen in battles long before this day. Their voices accused him, reminding him of every decision that had ended in blood. You lead them to die, Marcus, they said. And these too will be no different. For a heartbeat, the weight of command pressed heavier than the Dominion's gravity ever had. But then he looked at Cole, steady in his calm, and at Varga, fierce in his fury, and he felt the truth settle within him. They were alive. They had chosen to stand with him. That was enough. Hale raised his voice, cutting through the illusions. The dead don't speak for me. The living do. His hand clenched into a fist, and with that resolve the figures shattered into nothing. The constructs shrieked as though the defiance of three men was a wound they could not heal. The illusions warped and buckled, reality fighting against the Dominion's control. Above, the overseer's composure fractured, his claws raking the railing in frustration. He barked orders to unseen controllers, demanding the intensity be increased, but the chamber itself began to tremble under the strain. The system was breaking. Varga charged forward, swinging his makeshift shield into the nearest construct until it dissolved into fragments of shadow. You wanted willpower? Here's mine. His voice boomed, echoing like thunder. Cole dismantled another with precision, his scavenged rifle spitting controlled bursts that found weaknesses in their form. They're losing cohesion. Push harder. Hale surged between them, bleeding, weary, yet carrying himself with the strength of command that refused to die. Together. One step further. Always one step further. The three advanced through the crumbling gauntlet, their every act of defiance tearing at the Dominion's design. Constructs fell, illusions shattered, and the unstable floor gave way beneath the strain. When they reached the far side, the chamber collapsed entirely, leaving them standing in the wreckage of what was meant to be their tomb. Silence reigned above. The overseer could not disguise his shock. His gauntlet, a trial crafted to crush civilizations, had been broken by three men who refused to bow. The audience, once certain of humanity's failure, now stared in stunned disbelief. Hale straightened, his uniform scorched, his body trembling with exhaustion, yet his voice carried with unshakable strength. You built this to break us. But all you've done is remind us who we are. We don't bend. We don't shatter. We endure. And if this was your best, then you'd better pray we never decide to test you in return. The chamber rang with the weight of his words. Varga stood beside him, chest heaving, a grin cutting across his battered face. Next time, make it harder. Cole lowered his weapon, his calm gaze fixed on the overseer. Or at least make it worth our time. For the first time since humanity had stepped onto Karen 7, the Dominion did not speak. Their silence was an admission greater than any proclamation. The three soldiers stood together in the wreckage of the gauntlet, blooded but unbroken, not just survivors but victors. What had been meant to crush them had become their proving ground, and the galaxy itself had witnessed it. Hale looked at his men, pride heavy in his chest despite the pain racking his body. "Warm-up's over," he said quietly. "Now they know what we are." The words hung in the silence like a promise, a warning, and a declaration of war yet to come. The Dominion had tried to measure humanity and failed. What came next would no longer be their test, but humanity's answer.